just you get to choose. Right? Like here's the scenario. The environment gives us something which can be perceived as negative, can be perceived as not working, can be perceived as problematic. The world's ending. But we get to choose to see it like that, or we get to choose to see it as an opportunity.
So clearly that it's my responsibility now to do that for other people. If I have information and other people's success is my success, and vice versa.
Because you know what, like the challenges or the roadblocks are the journey themselves.
There's no big things. It's all little things compounding on top of each other. Coach Nick, a lot of what we do, we acknowledge the victories or the great things that are happening in our lives, right? And that's for a purpose. So I think I'd like to embody that principle today by way of celebrating that I haven't been feeling the greatest this week, but I feel like I'm handling it better than I ever have before. And what I mean by that is, I think before, if I felt bad or negative or maybe associated an emotion I was feeling with something that I didn't want to feel, I would reject that or try to feel something different. And this week I've really worked on leaning into that, and it feels like it's got less of a control over me, is how I might say that.
Mm.
And I also feel like I'm closer, like it's just a matter of time before that wave or like if it's an ebb and flow, before that ebb flips on itself and I'm in flow state.
That's awesome. How did you give yourself the space to make that decision? Like, what was it? Were you aware of it? Like, how did that manifest?
That's a great question, because I don't know if I can sit here and point to like a moment where it's like, oh, yep, I did it right there. But I think it was at some reflection point time. I do some regular meditative exercises throughout my day, morning and night. So it was probably during one of those spaces where it was just like an acknowledgement or an acceptance of the way I was feeling, and then getting curious and letting it be okay, not trying to change it. I think I've always tried to change or feel differently when I felt that way, and this was more of like an acceptance of, okay, it's here, like let's see what it turns into. It's just more of a curiosity than a resistance.
The language of being curiosity is always very helpful for me. That really does change it. In that moment, like, just okay, everything's going to be all right. Just like, what's interesting here? Like, what might I need from this? Like, everything's going to be okay. There's a concept in coaching called future pacing. And so we will frequently, we're working with clients, we're talking about where they want to go, why it's important for them, and set out goals and visions and stuff, outcomes. Future pacing is a bit more than that. The way I think about it, at least coach, I'd like to get your thoughts, obviously. So once you have that, what will it feel like? Put yourself in that spot. What will it mean? What else will be available to you? And it's kind of like, we do it in a way when we go, look at the concept of going to that next top mountain that you're going to, and realize that that's the top of the mountain. That's the furthest mountain away you can see right now. But when you get to that mountain, you'll be able to see a whole bunch of other mountains that you just can't see right now. It's the same thing. Like, you go, when you get there, like, wow, what would be possible when you are that person? I like to do that for myself in a different way, where it's just like, rather than doing from an outcome setting or a vision setting, when I have this, wow, what will be available? It's more like on the other end of it, worst case, everything's still fine.
Yeah, so there's a balance there for me, in that, like, sometimes I feel like I'm so far down in the valley that I can't even see, like, I don't have a concept of what that mountain's looking like. So that's the push and pull, is like, I think I do that quite well with, like, like what you're saying, I embody, like, how would I feel if I were on that mountaintop? Like, well, how would I act? How would I carry myself? What body mannerisms would I do? What would I say? So I think this week for me, it's being okay, like, not focusing on that, and not, like, when that comes back to me, I'll know. But for now, it's okay for me not even to focus on that right now.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. So it's like if there's any suffering type feelings out there, and that's my word for that, but I'm just using it as an umbrella, right? Then we know it's because of something that we want, or what does culturists say? Self-centered fear, right? We're gonna something that we feel like we're gonna lose, something we don't have, and the more suffering comes from focusing more that or trying to get back to it. To your point, but if you just go, okay, then that dissipates. Yeah.
Yeah, so that may have been what I've done in the past. Is like I don't want to where I am. I want that.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the resistance or the kind of the friction comes from. So I think this week what I'm saying is I'm so confident that I know I'll get back there that I'm actually going to let that go and be okay with not focusing on that for a little bit.
And then like the irony of that is that if you do that and then you're fine and feel good already what you're doing, that you don't even need to get back to the other thing anyway.
I think that's just another way of what I tried to describe in the beginning of like flipping the ebb and flow on itself. Like I feel like even though I feel like I do right now, that I'm closer than ever, like I could flip it any second here and I'll be ready to go.
Right.
Yep.
Isn't that bizarre? It's just
that's crazy. That is crazy. Yeah.
It's kind of like I don't want to know something in case, like, if there's some sort of trick to something, but I want the result of the trick. I don't want to know how the trick works because in case it doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
But it like it with this, it doesn't matter because you still get to your result. But because it's two different parts of our brain, right? So it doesn't even matter if your intellectual brain knows, it still works. It's like if everything's okay with everything being how it is, or whatever happens, it's okay. Then it doesn't matter what happens, everything's okay. The irony is when you're like that, you tend to be more in the, well, let's go make things in a way that they could be. And I guess like my resistance then comes up with like, I don't want to spend too much time in and everything's okay, because what if I forget how things I could make? Like, am I going to be in a place where I'm like, going back down to the pain and bouncing off the pain rather than the pleasure? But again, then if it's okay, there's no pain, right?
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah. So this is maybe where my definition of resilience might expand. This is a, shout out to episode 31 or whatever, that was a long time ago. But I think it's part of what I'll add to my definition of resilience this week is the ability to turn it off and on when I'm ready for it. And I use that, maybe I want to be more careful about when I'm ready for it, when it feels right to me. Like right now, it wouldn't have felt right to do that. What was the word you used? The pace setting, vision setting?
Future pace.
Future pacing. It wouldn't have felt right for me to do that. And to your point, like maybe sometimes that's what's needed to lean into that uncomfortable part, but it felt like it would have been counterintuitive or even destructive, would have made this ebb last longer for me. So it's the confidence in my resilience that when it flips, I will be able to go back, because that's where I belong anyway. Like I know I'm there, but instead of being so frantic to get back up to the mountain, it's like kind of it's like, oh, you know what? I'm going to put my skis on so that I can gain momentum this way and I'll come up the other side even faster.
It's very cool. So in essence, I wrote down in big capital letters, it's trust yourself.
Yeah.
Trust yourself that you know what the right thing is to do. Go with that. Don't try and second guess yourself. Trust that you've got it set up. And it comes from knowing that you've done the right things to set your life on the path you want to set it on. There'll be other cues in your life which come back that you've previously set that will push you back into that place gently anyway. And it's kind of like we were just talking about potential awesome coaches that perhaps isn't the right time for them to come to Pro Advisor Coach, but they could be awesome down the line when something happens in their life and they're ready to do it. I trust myself that I'm going to make sure my assistants put them in the calendar to remind me in 6 months' time to reach out to them and say, how you doing? And
That's a great example because that's something that you want, but not right now.
right. So
Yeah.
it's like an investment account, like you set it and forget it, right? Like you keep looking at it, you never grows, right? Or you you would end up taking it out because you want to build enough trust that you know that you of today trust the you of yesterday. So whatever it is that's coming up, it's going to be set up because you set it up for yourself. And I'm always thinking, how can I set up the future me? What do I need to do today to make sure the future me? And I've really noticed that for me, my process in my systems in terms of coaching my clients. You've been on like back-to-back calls and you jump on a client, you're like, no idea what happened in the last conversation we had. But I trust myself that if I go to my notes, bam, I'm straight back there instantly. Sometimes it's like, who is this person?
It's certainty in the times of uncertainty.
Right. It comes back down to that for sure. So so for me, the extension there, the distinction is I trust in like that it will be, things will prevail and be okay. But then it's like trusting myself on top of that as well.
Yeah. And then, back to the conversation with like zooming in, zooming out the lens, like there's potholes along the way. This is just a pothole, letting that be okay. Like, we know by now we cannot connect the dots looking backwards until there are more dots. So it's trusting that this experience that I'm feeling right now is here to serve me in some way. I think maybe a year or two ago, this was a practice that I was still learning. Now it's automatic for me to look at it like that. And to me, that is the biggest difference that is easiest to overlook. When you talk about progress and honoring and celebrating, think of how I started this conversation. Just like I want to pay homage to the fact that what I'm celebrating is that I'm okay with not feeling okay, because I know that because I'm accepting it, it's actually going to serve me better, and not even in the long term, like quite like just around the corner, and that's going to exponentially increase the long-term results just because I'm embodying the short-term results as well.
And just the very fact that we're in it doing this, right? And that like this podcast is scratch your own itch. This is us sharpening the saw, right? And hopefully other people take some stuff and helps them also. But just the fact that you're putting it out there is like obviously massively helpful for me, but I expect for you as well, because you're bringing even more awareness to the fact that you're doing that. So you're actually building it's like you're going and working out, but this is you having a protein drink afterwards, right? You're making sure that muscle keeps growing after you've done the workout.
Yeah.
The recovery period. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's also in alignment with what our podcast is called. Like it's the truth that this is the way that I feel right now. So to pretend otherwise is would be against what we stand for here. So this is me living out that principle. And then I didn't think of it like that, right? I'm gaining more clarity too as the more I talk through it. But it is the case that that is happening in real time here as we talk about this.
It's just wild how powerful that is, right? I have some clients who will come on and I'll ask one question about what's been great, and they will talk solidly for 29 minutes. Like solidly. And they'll take themselves on this like wild journey of discovery and celebration and challenge, and then action and work, and then commitment, and then we're out of there. It's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
And some clients know it so well, they'll come and go, okay, what am I celebrating? Oh, I'm celebrating. And they'll ask the questions for themselves. What do I want to get out of today's call? Okay, what do I want to get out of today's call? Right. And so it's powerful to continue to build that muscle.
Yeah. So what I might share is that now that we're talking about this, I guess I've been doing this week, which is fun to reflect upon. But there's many different questions we can ask up front of our coaching time to make sure that we're getting the most use out of it. I think and I use a lot that question a lot. Like, what do we want to get out? How do we focus our time over these next 30 minutes? The technique and the question that I've been asking this week that I'm just thinking about right now is like just checking in, like how are we feeling? How do you feel right now? And that's what it starts with. It starts with that honesty with like, I I don't feel this way, or I do feel this way. Like, this is what this is. Because I think that lays the groundwork for making progress right there. Like, that's where progress has to start, with being honest where we are right now.
Triple A approach. Got like,
Yeah.
what's awareness equals being dead dirt honest with yourself.
Hmm.
Right? You can't. You try to build on something which you're lying to yourself on or deceiving yourself with. It won't work. And worse still, if you don't, you may not know that you're deceiving yourself with it, and you're like, it doesn't work. It must be something wrong with me. But that's why the really like leaning into that question and that space is something that I personally get resistance to doing, because my action mindset goes, well, let's do something about it. Let's just keep moving forward.
Hmm.
And I have a resistance to doing that clients sometimes as well, because I'm thinking, I want to move forward. Surely you must want to move forward as well. You don't want me to ask this question. I don't want to answer it. Like, but that's something to contend with for sure.
I was going to ask that, and maybe we could start to wrap up with this. Is that, what practice do you have that promotes, that honesty with yourself, to where, meditation might be the easiest one to, well, that's where I check in. Is there anything else that you do? Maybe you do it so often or so much that you're running through the motions with it now. But like, how do you make sure that you're being honest with yourself and where you are? Like, what are some techniques or strategies or even habits that you use that somebody might be able to take away from today?
Yeah, it's so stacked for me, and like in constant reminders throughout the day. Like it's always on my mind, except from when I'm in like, so I'm either in flow state or I'm in reflection state. Kind of feels like that. Or well, I guess you can put distraction in there as well, because you know what, that happens to everyone. But it's, if you're, I'm looking at my calendar for today and thinking like, what's been on my mind today? Where have I been? Like, and then like my morning ritual of like, my workout this morning was great. My stretching was great. Listening to books was great. Sauna was great. And I was like, man, I was tired. I came home and I sat on the couch like, I've got 15 minutes here. I want to go to sleep. After I've done all that, I'm just going like, okay, what do I need? What can I do? What should I do? What do I need? And then realizing it's okay, right? And just having that little bit of space. And that's a whole bunch of questions all at once, and half I'm aware of, half I'm not. I think
Yeah.
like having all those cues, again, like I say, oftentimes, like, part of the reason why I do what I do is so I could stay in this place and work on these things all the time. For me,
Mm.
I'm like a constant. I'm a, like I'm a student of this stuff. So, and I just share and learn through the day from my clients, right? And like, hopefully give some of that back.
Yeah. Something you just mentioned triggered something for me. So I wasn't sure how I would answer my own question there. So I'm glad that
Great way to, yeah, it's a good question.
yeah.
Yeah.
For me, it's this thing right here, right? Whenever I have downtime, I catch myself. I just like, I glance at it, I look at it, check this, check that. So for me, what you just said, right? I got 15 minutes. Well, what do I do? Like, where do I check in? What's the best way for me to spend this time? It's not enough time to, go out and solve world hunger, for example, right?
You need 20 minutes for that.
Yeah. Right. Talk about, yeah, we're just short, unfortunately. But so I've been practicing this with a client in the past couple of weeks. We just shoot a text to each other at night. Hey, phone's down. Pass a time that we've established for each other, and we made this agreement with each other. And I actually think that's where some of this has come from. Like, whereas I would have been scrolling through, this is the ultimate distraction right here. Right. So when we put that away, or when we have somebody else helping us be accountable to that, these other things come through, and it's so funny, right? We almost don't even notice that there is progress happening there. But maybe I never would have gotten to that place this week had I not been doing that. So that's my takeaway, is maybe use this as a trigger. The next time you catch yourself looking, because a lot of this is unconscious, right? Oh, let me check. Think about how you can better be spending that time, even if it doesn't feel like there's progress. Like, just sitting and being present with where you are is the progress. Like it's the equivalent of just showing up to coaching, right? Just show up, just do it.
Yeah, it's huge, and it's you've got to create the space before you can put something else in. It's like, well, I'm not. What else am I going to do anyway if I don't look at my phone? It's like, well, you maybe you don't know the answer, but you won't have it until you stop looking at your phone or whatever the equivalent distraction is.
Chicken and the egg. So create the space first and see what happens.
You've got to create the space first. Yeah.
Yeah, just trust that unknown, that even though you don't know how you're going to spend your time, just trust that it's going to be more valuable than freaking Twitter.
That's right. It's huge. Huge code.
Awesome stuff, Coach. More to reflect on. This is one of the conversations that I'll probably hang up with and think more about than any other recent one, at least. So I want to reflect more on this. So thank you, and we'll see you next week.
Spectacular. Take care.
Thank you for watching another episode of Truth Seekers. We appreciate your interaction, so please comment, like, subscribe to YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want more, check out some of our links to our masterclass, The Achiever's Mindset, and come join our LinkedIn group. And what do you want to see more of? Remember, we're here to share the simple secrets of successful. So help us do that. What do you want to see? What do you want to see more of? Thanks, and see you again next time.